If you use the internet on a daily basis, and chances are you do, you probably don't put much thought into cybersecurity. You know, your network connections, the pages you visit, the files you download. You should be thinking about these all the time. Welcome to And Security for All. Your host is Kim Hakim. We're here to help you understand, in general terms, how and why your cybersecurity should be kept in check. Now, here is Kim Hakim.
Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to another episode of And Security for All. I'm your host today, Kim Hakim. Very excited for our show today. We are actually, as most of you know, and many of you may not know, I am the CEO of FutureCon Events, and we host cybersecurity conferences all over North America. We travel all over the country bringing pretty amazing speakers to our events and educating the cyber community about what's happening in the cyber world. Excited that tomorrow we're heading to Seattle and we have a show on Thursday, and my speaker that I have on today, he is going to be moderating our CISO panel. So I'm excited to have him on the show today. Today, we're going to talk about AI ethics and governance, building trustworthy systems. Today, I have Tony North. He's the Director of Technology Support from the City of Seattle. Welcome to the show, Tony.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to see you. Very excited about coming back out to Seattle. I missed it last year. I don't know why, but for some reason, I can't remember. We do so many shows. I was not able to make it back out to Seattle last year. My team was there, so I'm excited to see all of our friends out in Seattle. How's everything going in Seattle? You guys, is it raining, shiny? What's going on in Seattle?
I mean, the funny thing about Seattle is that the weather can be one day this and that and the other. Right now, in the last 2 days, it's been sunny. I know it was like 77 on Sunday. And so by the end of this week, I think it's gonna not be great, but that's Seattle.
Well,
It's
I
cloudy.
looked and it looks like it's going to be sunny on Thursday for our event,
Good,
but I guess it
good.
doesn't really matter because people in Seattle, they are just used to the weather. So
That's right.
rain
That's
does
right.
not keep them inside. So that's the
Nope.
good news.
We don't use
So
umbrellas. We just we just take the rain as it comes.
that's funny. Well, so tell us a little before we get into the show and we talk a little bit about AI ethics and governance. Let's talk a little bit about you, Tony, and how did you tell us a little bit about your career path and how you ended up at the City of Seattle and how you got in industry. And let's just get to know you a little more.
Thank you. Yeah, I started in the industry in 1991. At the time, it was a company called Safeco Insurance that was headquartered. I was the first PC technician and PC trainer. They were a mainframe shop. And then I just kind of evolved there. I got to join a couple of companies, key ones like McAfee, that started the ITSM platform. And that's Vendetta is one of those. And I started implementing ITSM systems around the world. Got to go to 27 countries and 43 states and meet a lot of people. And then once I became, a manager, director for about 20 years now, I started speaking. I like to give back. So I have my own nonprofit called Seattle HDI. I'm a podcaster called techtalktony.net. And I also master ceremonies, conferences, as well as moderate. And I'm just a people person. I taught myself most of the technology and but learned a lot from other people. And now I like to give that back by doing the stuff that I do today as a speaker.
So are you primarily for the City of Seattle? Are you more on the governance side? Is that like your role, your primary role there?
No, so I am responsible for technology support. The funny thing is, technology support gets involved with everything. So we're now working on deploying Copilot for the city of Seattle. And our team is instrumental in that from a support perspective. Although we do get involved with governance because we have to support the things that governance, needs, like the intake process and classifications of the AI, making sure people don't use sensitive data, training the city employees. We have about 14,000 employees, so there is a lot to it. But my natural way I got into cybersecurity is I've been teaching cybersecurity based on CompTIA Security Plus for the last couple of years. And I, just like everything in IT, when you see something coming, you better you better learn it, or you're going to be behind the scenes. And so that's how I've become a speaker of AI and cybersecurity.
Well, I know when we talk about GRC or any type of governments, everyone's just kind of like, oh, it's just so daunting because it's just a lot, and I feel
It
like
is.
they're their own squad, the
That's right.
GRC people,
That's right.
which tons of them come to our events and we love them, but it's just a lot that they have to take
Yeah.
on with everything evolving and changing in the industry. So maybe we can just kind of start out and let me just ask some practical terms like, what do you mean by AI ethics?
So AI ethics is one of those things where, when we talk about ethics, we really talk about fairness and transparency, as well as accountability, privacy, and safety. So AI ethics is really focused on doing all the things that help us have a system, a fair system that's not biased, uh, safe, so we're protecting personal data, but also being able to be accountable. We have to know in these systems exactly what they're doing. You can't have a system that you can't explain. If you can't explain it, you shouldn't use it. So we need to be accountable for it as well.
So how is that going to even happen? I mean, I guess AI, I hear it all day, every
That's
day
right.
at our events. That's all people are talking about, obviously, right now is AI. And
Crazy.
it seems like
That's right.
that's pretty much the trend of my podcast for 2026. So I
That's
learned
right.
so much, about what's going on. But why is trust such? I mean, we all know, trust is important, zero trust,
Yeah.
we've heard that for many years. But why is trust such a critical factor in AI adoption?
Yeah, it is absolutely. A matter of fact, we even talk about a culture of trust. It's mostly based on the risk areas that we face, where data can be biased, where you lack explanation of what's going on, and then you're not protecting data privacy. So these things. Another element is when we rely on AI too much, right? It's really an augmentation tool. We need to have humans involved. So there is, of course, always the human, judgment as part of it. Human in the loop is what, in the industry we call it. But the key there is we want a system that is transparent. People are open to know what's going on, and we're able to have it reliable as a reliable system. But we absolutely want to build what I call a culture of trust, which is being able to see everything that AI chooses to do, the algorithm that's used, and specifically where AI is being used when the public or the community, uses something. They want to be aware where AI is involved, and that's where the trust comes in.
Well, you said that you wanted to make sure that like your teams, and I don't know if you actually said your teams, but
Yeah,
are
that's right.
we relying too much? Do you think that the security teams are already relying too much on AI? And if they are, what are the biggest areas that concern you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the biggest areas that concern me is data privacy. I do think we rely on AI a little too much. We sometimes treat it as a normal system that we would have, like knowledge management, and those systems that we use, maybe it's antivirus, they have been proven for years. But when you involve AI in systems, you just have to be able to measure, monitor, and like I tell people, don't be afraid to set up a system that monitors the logs for AI so that you can see if any data is being exposed. So we really own that responsibility to have the ability to trust the system, knowing that, by the way, and I know what happens when we don't trust the system or when system is being used, then everybody gets into this blaming somebody for why this didn't happen. Because AI is so new, we need to have a no blame game and just be able to have knowledge coming to at all parts so that we can potentially lead to an organizational wide improvement, an organizational wide learning. Because we're all, I always kind of give the analogy of we're all like flying on this plane and building the plane as we go along. So systems are still learning what AI can do, but to trust it, we got to be able to question. Secondly, people, they don't like to question it, right? In general, in IT, we're like, don't question me. I know what I'm doing, but that's the opposite of the trust model in AI. We want to be able to enable people to ask questions and question what we're doing, and then being accountable, we need to be able to explain.
Well, do you think that that is a issue? People worried about, asking questions because, it's one bad question, can rock the whole boat in a way, in a sense, I think a lot of people in IT, especially with the fast pace of AI evolving, probably have to fake it until they make it a little bit. So,
That's right.
and with the job market so intense and people, really, savoring their jobs, what do you think some of are you seeing a difference of like AI governance different than the traditional IT governance that you had in place prior to AI?
Yeah. I think I know one of the governance I built was the ITSM governance here in Seattle before this role for a company called Pfizer, and the governance there was a little bit different. The focus on AI governance is really going to be trying to classify every request. Now, in ITSM, we're going to classify every request too, but the requests are different. For instance, the requests inside of AI are going to be based on risk, automation, prediction, decision support, and generative content. And so you can use a similar model when you're doing governance, but you're going to do some different things. And I know that, for instance, fairness and equality is typically not part of other governance programs. Definitely, it's part of AI. Privacy, to a certain extent, in other governances, data governance, privacy is there, but not in ITSM governance. And so being able to protect people's sensitive data is absolutely something special. And then creating reliability, um, using real world scenarios with your data so that you can ensure that you can review that the answers are coming back, they're equitable, they're fair, they're, making sure to, take care of people and their stuff by also protecting them. So we want to make sure in the governance for AI that we definitely go a little bit deeper to protect people, to protect decisions, and to protect the organization. At the city of Seattle, we definitely want to train everybody on how to build a system, but also teach everybody not to put in sensitive data, for instance, or asking questions that extracts data. And you'll build a co-pilot, for instance, in our system where it has its own tenant and it can't go outside. But then you have to train people, well, if you're using other devices, let's keep it in our world. And so, yeah, I think governance for AI and cybersecurity in general is a little bit more complex than other governance programs.
So, are you seeing some common, like ethical pitfalls when it comes to AI governance that companies are facing right now?
Yeah, I definitely see some pitfalls. The bias data. One of the examples that I'll use here tomorrow. I'm in Vegas right now, and I'm going to talk about this topic. So we're prelim in this topic. One of the things that I see is that people are using to test things. They're not using demographics. They're not verifying that the data history that they're using. So they're testing data on old data that's usually 7 to 10 years old, and the reality is it's a better approach um, to test data on current data that you have that's just a week away. So I see that as a pitfall. I also see that people, turn it on and turn it off. And in the IT world, right? Cybersecurity is just another piece of the IT world. Um, we've been showing how to deploy systems in a phased approach, and that's absolutely what should be done here. I know we've done that in my current job here, where we take a sampling, let's say just of the IT team. We got 500 people in IT for the city of Seattle. Let's just take that and not do any of the, external, the fire department, the police department. Let's just take the internal team and do a test or a pilot for a period of time, and then don't just launch right after that. And that's another mistake, pitfall that I see. They just launch right after that. Shut things down, review all that data, take that data to improve the system, and then launch with more knowledge about what to do, more knowledge about what you saw in the test data, and more knowledge about protecting people, including sensitive information. And so, and then once you have that, then let's take another phased approach, and now let's launch it to fire. And then once we're done, let's launch it to the police. Again, being able to take a phased approach gives you at every step of the way something that could be improved, something that's going to be able to help you, and most importantly, help the community, the public, or whoever it is that you're serving.
So, did you think, like being the director of tech support for the city of Seattle, like once AI came around and we started talking about ethics and governance, I mean, were you expecting that that was going to be part of your job as a practitioner, or is it part of your job as a practitioner? I assume it is since you brought this topic to the table. And if it's not you and some of the other organizations that I'm not certain how big your security team is, but I would imagine the city probably has a bigger team than some of the organizations have. So I guess it's a two-part question about you handling the ethics part, and if it's not you and some of these smaller organizations that don't have a GRC team, who is handling the ethics and just the validity of AI and the governance and the ethical part of it.
Great question. Yeah, in the city of Seattle, we now have an AI officer, and she handles and is pulling together. But to be honest, it's a large ask for any one group, any one person. And you're absolutely right. I mean, in other organizations that I've been to, I hear, well, we got 2 people, or we got a team of 9, but 7 of them are doing vulnerability. And so because we've really evolved with cybersecurity and AI, there's so many elements now. When it first started, and I'm gonna guess 10 years ago, because I started teaching around 7 years ago. It was just a couple of people, and they were just a segment of IT. And now, the CISO runs the organization when it comes to cybersecurity and AI. But then now we've got segments of places where AI is being handled with an AI officer, which is what we've done. Our AI officer is new. And I think really every company has to determine how best and where to put it. Obviously, it needs to be in a place where leadership is, because what I find is that AI is not just a technical solution. AI is a leadership strategy. How can we use it? How can we augment other areas, but also protect these systems from going down? But here's the key here for me. Support, I've been managing support for about 25 years. And support is key to the success. One of the examples I have is with the Delta Airlines, the CrowdStrike in 2024. This was an AI dependent scheduling system that completely collapsed, and Delta had no manual recovery in 2024. So the support team, and this is why we stay on the front lines, the support team had to reboot systems, and they had booted into recovery mode. They had to remove the corrupted files. They had to resync all of the systems again, and then machine by machine clean these systems up manually. And the support team didn't just do the technical aspects. They helped rebook passengers. They helped by managing the backlog chaos, and then they helped by staffing airports. So it just depends on your line of business. But for me, in support, AI and cybersecurity, it's 100% part of our program because support is on the front lines. And so our support team, our service desk, takes calls from 14,000 customers, and which are the city employees. And we need to be prepared. We need to know what's going on. We need to have a feedback loop that we can get to engineering to maybe improve some training that could be given to people. We need to manage the user interface when things are going wrong. This is exactly what support does on every system that we support. And most importantly, the key is support is the first one to see the errors and the first one to troubleshoot the errors. So I learned a long time ago, not just because I teach cybersecurity, that support is it's on the front lines. We are the ears and eyes of what's happening in support, and because of that, support is involved with this ethics and governance model from the very beginning because we have to know that first to know what to look for in the data problems.
Well, funny you brought that up because my next question for you was going to be what are some real world examples of what examples of AI going wrong and what we can learn from it. And so we know about the Delta, and then we have the situation that happened out in Vegas. And was that, I refresh my memory, was that a support person that it started with? I know it was somebody in the Vegas
Yep.
situation that took a call.
Yep, yep, it was the first one, and all of the examples that I have, which I'm, I'm gonna share here tomorrow and Friday as well, but they all point to the fact that the first person, the first connection, right, is that support person that takes a call from a customer and says, "Hey, I see sensitive data," or "Hey, I see, a problem. That's the wrong answer," right? And that's where we get into the place of, you know being accountable and helping people, not worrying about, oh, it's that team. We just need to solve that issue. Really, one of the first examples was, which I feel bad, this is from my hometown in Seattle, and that was at Amazon. Amazon, which is an early, a company that does early technology for everything. And in 2018, this is why I said this is like, I don't know, like a long time ago. In 2018, they used AI for recruiting. It was top of the line. Nobody had ever really done this before, helping them filter like resumes and using AI to just improve their process. And what they actually learned is that using that system, it had penalized women's organizations. Now, why that happened, and by the way, how they didn't find this, first of all, was because they only found this after the whole system was deployed. And that's why I do this discussion to share with people what you need to look for. What they found after the fact was their training data, again, their training data, which needs to be reviewed. was on 10 years of male-dominated hiring practices prior, obviously, to 2018. And so these are they're just mistakes. They happen. They're real life. AI obviously had to take the whole system offline, and because of that, they weren't able to use that system until they got some of those mistakes corrected, and then they had to rebuild the system again to avoid the bias. Now, ironically, San Francisco had the same thing, except they did theirs in 2023. They deployed a benefit system. A brilliant idea, just to use AI. And this is why you use AI to augment. You don't use it as your mainstay. And so they deployed systems benefits for their employees, and they came to find that their data that they tested was historical data that didn't include data. The data that they tested was only English speaking data. So anybody who spoke other languages were automatically not able to enroll into benefits. And so this affected 15% of their employees. Again, just like Amazon, they had to take the whole thing offline and be able to then recalibrate. And most importantly, that took months, it took time. I know, like, the Delta situation was $500 million in revenue loss. And this is why I teach this, because there are some minor mistakes that people make that will enable them to improve. So bias testing across demographics, real world validation scenarios, and most importantly, which is so silly, right? I'm in support, but people forget this, have an escalation path. Every element of AI that you deploy in your systems should have a little button that says, uh, do you need support? And people miss that. And then they don't know where to go. And then they don't trust the system. And then it becomes a rumor. And now you're fighting against perception as opposed to reality. So
Well,
absolutely,
sometimes
these are,
it's, yeah. Sometimes it's not always easy to find support,
that's right.
just I'll just give a example. LinkedIn. We're on LinkedIn Live right now.
That's
It's
right.
not very easy to find support on LinkedIn. And I needed it last week and I dug deep and I was able to find it after probably years of trying to find LinkedIn support. So
That's great.
so I mean, we are in a time where huge organizations, I don't know what Facebook or Instagram or any of those look like if you need
Yeah,
support. I mean,
that's right.
it's all AI driven now. So but going, that was just a comment I was making, but I want to go back to like the bias and like the algorithm biases. Like, what are you still seeing this? I'm sure we see this, like, it's funny you keep bringing up things that I'm about to ask you about, but what are some other real world examples of that algorithm bias that we're seeing in AI?
Yeah, the the real world examples, I think, are people are wanting to use the AI for systems, and it's the real world bias is just really based on not having proper data to test, not doing a pilot program and seeing the type of data, and most importantly, reviewing the data. One of the things I talk about, I'm a techie, so I won't get too technical, but one of the things I talk about is, we use Splunk and all these different type of logs, but what I don't see people doing in AI and cybersecurity right now, unless you're tracking down an event on a vulnerability, I don't see people taking the AI logs and filtering through them to look for biased decisions, things where the system is going to make a decision based on just the data that it has. And so I have a couple of friends, and they own AI companies, right? They develop their own AI solution, and they sell them to cities, states, or the private sector. And one of the things that they do in that is they take history of data, but before they take the history of data, they actually filter the data, they review the logs of the data to make sure that, and then they test it. So they test, hey, I'm looking for in this case, let's say Amazon. I'm looking for a job, and they'll test it with all the different demographics. I'm a female. I'm a different culture. I'm I'm from the city of Seattle. And so those are the real life uh, uh, details that are needed to train the model. And so the answer is this: some people don't have that. So, like with my friends in an AI company, they actually build that as they go along, and they review the intake classifications, they evaluate the risk, the automation, all of the predictions that it'll make, and then they'll run scenarios with different demographics so that then when they do a test, they can see that it's okay, it's the decision is not biased, the decision is just what's in the system, and it enables us to avoid and find mistakes that could be problems. And so real life examples, that's the reason why I want to talk about this, because we do need to do better testing so that we can ensure what we're providing is fair and equitable.
Well, how can security teams help make sure that the AI tools or whatever you're using is ethical and is being fair? How, I mean, I know that you have to train some of these models, but that isn't, some of those models are just digging, off of the past history and
That's
what's
right.
out there, good or bad, whatever's on, out there on the web. So
Right.
how are the security teams going to maneuver, things being fair and ethical and safe?
Yeah, that's great. That that's one of the key things. And I know, a lot of teams now they're building their own, like you had talked about earlier, GRC programs, and then because of that, they have somebody that is designated to reviewing all of the activities of AI. But when you start with this, one of the things that I share with people is to build a governance model. Your GRC folks need to really focus on classifying every bit of data that's going into the system, all the different areas. Then they need to classify the risk of that data. And then, of course, a lot of times people, AI, we've heard about the data centers being exploding, but you'll need to, for your AI model, ensure that you can have a log that expands, have the size S3 bucket on AWS or whatever tool that you use, maybe Microsoft Azure, but getting a place where you can put data, that data can be reviewed. And then now you have your folks. If you don't have a designated GRC team, somebody in the AI cybersecurity needs to be just designated to filtering and going through all of those requests, all of those intake classifications, and be able to understand what to look for things like sensitive data, um, and most importantly, decisions, reviewing the request and then seeing the decision that was given to your public or your community. And those decisions that are being reviewed, those answers of decisions being reviewed, can help you improve your data model and build your governance for the AI system.
So, kind of taking a little bit of a left turn here and going back to what you were talking about, how the city of Seattle, you guys have an AI officer, you said.
Yes. Yep.
So, I am seeing that like throughout the country because this conference, that's coming to Seattle travels all over North America. So, we're starting to slowly see those roles pop up and some of them coming to our events. What are not even really historically,
He's done.
because these are new
That's
roles.
right.
So
That's right.
where are these, what is the background of these AI officers? What's typically what are the requirements for that? Just very curious, because I almost feel like they have to have some sort of legal type background, as if you're going to be talking about AI ethics and
That's right.
governance. So
Yeah.
what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, two things that I do. see data scientist people, because there's just a lot of mining, like the GRC folks we talked about. But you're right. The second thing that I see is legal experience, because ethics and governance, these a lot of times involve legal entities and decisions, and you got to work with lawyers. If, for instance, I mean, I am always challenging people to make sure they have cyber and AI secure insurance, right? This is like silly. If we're going to have a governance model, we better be insured, because humans make mistakes, systems make more. And so, and then the third area that I see for somebody who is an AI is somebody who's actually been in IT that's evolved. I do see the employees in cybersecurity, it tends to have its own track. And some of the employees in cybersecurity, they have the past IT experience for the evolution of computing since DOS. But there's a lot of people that just jump right into cybersecurity and they don't have that depth. But when it comes to, somebody that's, an AI governance, the third area that I see is somebody that's completely evolved with computing, understands networking and cloud, and has worked in some leadership capacity, in that history of it. So data scientists, lawyers, and somebody with a lot of extensive experience in IT, ITSM, cybersecurity, and the governance of all of those.
So is your AI officer, are they like reporting to the CIO, or are they working with the CIO, or are they working with the CISO? Where would we see them in the chain of command of an organization now?
That is excellent question, by the way, because it's completely,
To
I
be
find
determined.
it to be determined
Yeah.
based on the organization, right? But ours, just to give an example, ours is we have a CTO as the leader of our organization, and that CTO then reports into the mayor. A lot of organizations, I just work for King County, and they have a CIO, and the CTO reports to them. And so the AI reports to the CIO. Here at the city of Seattle, AI is reporting into the CTO. But what I find after doing so many implementations for so many different business types, including the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Boston Red Sox, all these, the CBO, Congressional Budget Office in DC, every company I find has a different structure because they have a history of who does what. And at that particular time, this leader is a little bit stronger than that leader. And so decisions that I see leaders are making are really based on, hey, that person I feel more confident in. And so I don't think there's a standard yet. So let's, Kim, we're just going to say that's to be determined. But right now, it usually reports to the CIO or CTO.
So with the progression of AI and just things evolving so fast, before AI was, I mean, you're talking back to 2018, which to me seems like yesterday. You said that
That's
was a
right.
long time ago. I'm like, that just seems like yesterday. It's crazy to think that that was 8 years ago. But
That's right.
yeah, I mean, that was like right before COVID and everything.
Right
But
for, yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
we the job of a security practitioner was already stressful. It's been
Right.
stressful from day one, with breaches. And do you feel like with the progression of AI and everything moving so fast, is that making your job more stressful, or is it more exciting?
Another great question. It depends on the given day. One thing that I like to say, because I've been managing support so long, is that a boring day is a great day. So, like we strive for boring. But the reality is I have chosen this career because it changes every day. In 2018, like in 2017, I started on my cybersecurity destination. AI was just a blip at that time, and I chose it because I tend to like to see what's happening in the future, and I want to be relevant at the time something is important, and not just for to be able to be a speaker. That's one thing. But the other reason is because of my job. I've been managing support for a long time. I know that if I'm ahead of technology, I can make better decisions. I can ask better questions. I can not fall into a gap of being behind technology. And so, no, I think it's important to be able to improve ourselves at all times. And part of that improvement is seeing what's coming up. And that's kind of why I hopped on to do the things I do today back in 2017.
So, before we wrap up the show, what advice would you give our listeners as, how do you stay ahead of AI? How do you just assess it? Like what are some basic, you know, um, guidelines you can give our listeners because it just comes so fast, like just even not even knowing what's real, what's not real. Is
Right.
there any basic advice that you would want to leave with our listeners?
Yeah, and there's a lot. I mean, like the deep fake is real, but
Hmm.
things that come up sometimes are hard to see and hard to find. Um, and I think what you have to do is you have to do a lot of reading. I do a lot of reading. And then I'm a podcaster, so I equally do other podcasts and I listen. And so a lot of what I do to be able to be ahead of everything is I listen and I pay attention. And for instance, if you're not reading about quantum computing, hey, listen, we got cybersecurity, we got AI, and guess what's next? And so when you're reading and you're hearing and you're listening to people at conferences and on podcasts like this one, listen to the key things that they're sharing of what's in the future. One of the main topics I did to get into speaking was talking about elements of the future. Back then it was called emerging technologies. And I did that for like 6 years after 2017. And and that's when I tell people to go and find those type of events where you can hear about emerging technologies. Because once you hear it and you hear somebody share about its ability, then you can determine if it's real or not. But the one way that you can tell is when you see speaking topics right now, all on AI. That's your key right there to go learn it. Now you're hearing speaking topics a little bit, like in 2017 when I heard a little bit about AI and I was focused on cybersecurity. Today, you're hearing speaker topics about AI and cybersecurity and a little bit about quantum computing. Boom, that is your signal. And so listen to podcasts, listen to emerging technologies, read up on what's going on, and then you're gonna understand what is right in front of you.
Funny you brought up quantum computing because last week we had Jonathan Kimmett, who's the CISO for Alias Cybersecurity. He was a CISO at the University of Tulsa for like 20 plus years. But
Right.
quantum computing was so over my head. I was like, let's break down quantum computing. And he was on my show last week. So for anyone
Nice.
out there that wants to just kind of get a basic understanding of quantum computing, go to any place you listen to your podcast and listen to our show last week because it definitely, the way he broke it down, helped me understand quantum computing. So,
Right.
doing this show, I love having people like you on the show because I learned so much. I'm not a practitioner. I'm in the industry, but I don't do the same things as you. And I loved everything that you brought to the show today because, again, ethics and governance, that's another big topic. That's hard for people to understand all the legal ramifications that people are going to. We haven't even seen what's going to happen yet because we
That's
don't
right.
know,
That's right. That's
so
right.
yeah.
Right.
So much more to come. And as I said, I knew this 45 minutes would go by fast. Thank you, Tony, for being on the show. We're going to see you out in Seattle. Anyone that's listening, we still have room if you want to come join us out in Seattle. But again, Tony North, who's the Director of Technology Support for the City of Seattle, you can find him on LinkedIn, and you can see him at our show on Thursday. He'll be moderating our panel. So we'll see you there, Tony. Thanks again for spending this last 45 minutes with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks, Tony. And everyone else out there, thank you for joining another episode of And Security for All. We're going to be back here next week. Jonathan Kimmett will be returning to the show because we're going to talk about some of the breaches that we've seen in 2026 and just talk about that and where we go from here. So excited for that show. Everyone have a fabulous week. If you can't make it to our Seattle event, all of our events do run in a hybrid mode. You can join us virtually and listen to all of our speakers. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe, stay secure, and we'll see you next Tuesday.